Hello again, American Flyer fans. In my previous video, I mentioned that one advantage of not having a permanent layout is that it allows me to use my space to experiment with new ideas. One idea that I've been considering for quite a while is a train yard. I've seen videos by some people who have large model train layouts with multiple train yards. They get with friends to set up elaborate timetables and spend time moving cars around according to a preset plan. I don't have room for that large of a layout, but I decided to try to adapt that idea to a relatively small layout on my floor. I went to the ever-trusty Gilbert American Flyer instruction manual and found several layouts that have one train yard, but none that have two, so I used some ideas from these layouts to make my own. You're now seeing a picture of that layout with no trains or props. It consists of one primary loop with 2 yards and 1 spur shooting off of each end. The idea with these spurs is that I'll have a train waiting to come on from one spur and take the current train off using the other spur. Each train can drop off some new cars and take off other cars, so there's a steady rotation of cars going through the yards. For now, I don't plan to wire the switches and put in uncouplers because of how much wire it'll take, and I'm trying to keep it simple for this practice layout. Putting the transformer in the middle allows me to easily reach the switches and sidings so I can flip switches and uncouple cars by hand. I might experiment with wiring later, but I don't feel it's necessary at this time. As you can see on this slide, the layout consists of 4 switches on each train yard and 2 for the spurs. 5 switches are going to go to the left and 5 to the right. There are 36 straight track on the loop and 4 more on each spur, but I could add more there if I want to. 20 curved tracks are used. The layout measures 8 feet wide and 7 feet deep, not counting the spurs. The rest of the pictures and videos show what the layout could look like if some accessories and props are added. I also used a few backdrop segments to divide the layout into sections. The accessories, like the sawmill and the barrel loader, probably wouldn't be in an actual train yard, but they add interest to this one. This will be more fun to do if I can find somebody to come over and play trains, because the various jobs, including running the trains, switching trains out on the spurs, running the switches and uncouplers, and developing timetables, could be divided out, and I think it would be more fun with a partner or two. My real hope is that my grandchildren, who are already showing interest in the trains, will be interested in doing this once they're old enough. Until then, I'll spend a bit of time with this to see how it works. I have to admit that I have no experience at all with setting up schedules and timetables, so if any of you can give me some hints on this, I'd love to hear them. Maybe someday I can do a video of this layout in action. If you've ever considered setting up a train yard layout, but also have limited space to work with, then maybe this will be helpful. As I was finishing the first part of this video, I decided that I would like to try a hump yard. So what is a hump yard? Well, actually, Gilbert came out with an American Flyer hump set. So let's look at the description that was used in the Gilbert catalog. A hump is the high ground from which cars are cut loose from the locomotives to roll down the grade to the network of sidings below, where they are sorted out by switchmen who make up the various train combinations. So in essence, it takes advantage of gravity to move cars to various sidings to form new consists. If you do a search on YouTube for hump yards, you'll find several very good videos that show real hump yards in action. I put the links to several of these in the comments for this video. They're really interesting videos that I recommend watching if this interests you. The Gilbert set contains a few sets of trestles, a switch, a few track, an uncoupler, and a bumper. I already have all of these, so I don't need the set. This is what I developed using the layout that you saw in the first part of the video. I raised all the 4 sidings and switches on one side by combining several types of trestles and folding up cardboard. That's kind of rough, but I can clean it up if I want to make it permanent. There will be several obvious differences between my hump yard and a real one. First of all, the main line of a real railroad won't run through the hump yard like mine does. Secondly, The engine won't stop after every car is released to reset the switches. That will happen continuously in a real yard. With more practice and a helper, perhaps I could do that to some extent, but I can't do that now. Finally, ideally I would keep the 370 diesel that I'm using to push these cars locked in forward position, but I can't do that because I sometimes have to back it up to get momentum for the next push. I've also practiced this using a 325 AC Hudson, backing the cars up the hump. The Hudson had enough power to allow me to push more cars, and it did it steadily, but I couldn't keep up with the switches by myself. I'll have to work on that some more when I can line up a helper. Still, in spite of these differences, I really enjoyed working with this. Here are some pictures that show what you'll be watching. We'll imagine that the cars have already been parked in the yard, and I'll now be pushing them over the hump with the 370 diesel. I've already uncoupled all of the cars and closed the couplers so they won't reattach. I suppose if I had a helper to run an uncoupler at the top of the hump, then I wouldn't have to uncouple them in advance, and I could also use cars with link couplers. But for now, I'm just trying this out by myself, so I have to uncouple the cars in advance. It works well, but it doesn't work perfectly, so I've edited the video that you'll now see. But I think it'll give you a good idea of how the hump yard can work in a model train layout. I hope you enjoy it.